opportunity. We want this to be not only a movement that we take live on the ground, but we take live on the gram, on Twitter, across Facebook and social media platforms, because it is also about how do we own the narrative around what fair chance opportunity should look like, how employers should go after that, and most importantly, with the 40 plus people in the room, we should be able to point out 40 beacons of hope for those that are system involved around seeking opportunity. So just take 2 or 3 minutes, whip out your cell phone. I'm at Pushing Opportunity if you want to tag me, because that's what I do. I push opportunity to communities all day, every day. LeadersUp, USC Sol Price, but just use that opportunity, that hashtag Just Opportunity, and then we'll reconvene and start with our next presentation and panel. Can I get everybody's commitment around that? Okay, great. And all of our social media information is on the table tent right in front of you as well for your convenience. So it's all right there. Great. So part of today, as I mentioned, we wanted to ensure that you were exposed to the data, the business case, but also some of the societal constraints that are impacting those that are justice system involved or formerly incarcerated from seizing opportunity. We want to provide you a couple of different perspectives. And I'm grateful for Kawan, Jerry, and Evan being courageous enough to share their story with a level of transparency and conviction that will contextualize this experience from going from being reentry to homeless to being in the public healthcare system to now becoming fully employed and an entrepreneur is a phenomenal trajectory. And we want to replicate that trajectory for the thousands of young people and adults across LA County and the millions across our nation that are currently locked out of opportunity. So it's also important that we just not paint the picture through data and tell the story through perspective, but we also talk about how do we get to action. And when I talk about getting to action, the Fair Chance Employer Coalition is really focused on how can we advance promising practices around talent acquisition and retention and advancement for those that are justice system involved. Today, we have 2 phenomenal employers, the largest employer in our county, LA County, a public sector employer, as well as Kareem Webb, who represents a series of different businesses across the LA County region. The first presenter will be Jeffrey Tind, who is the Assistant Director over the Performance Management Branch for Los Angeles County's Department of Human Resources. Prior to his current role as Assistant Director, Jeffrey was also the Senior Manager for the Department of Human Resources Impact Division. He has a long public service record, serving as the Director of Labor and Employee Relations for the Los Angeles Superior Court and the Department of Human Resource Manager and the Department of Human Resource Managers for the Los Angeles County Parks and Recreation. It's critical for us to understand that if the county can employ fair chance practices, a public sector juggernaut of an employer, the largest county from a budget perspective in the nation. If LA County can become a fair chance employer from a policy perspective, as you'll hear from Jeffrey, from a practice perspective, as you'll hear from Jeffrey, and I'm talking about management performance KPIs that are now incorporated into their performance indicators and compensation packages for leaders across the county to shift their practices to be more inclusive of marginalized communities across this region. If the county can do it, any employer with the will of leadership and with the expertise of operators and practitioners like Jeffrey in your organization can do it as well. So without further ado, I would like to turn it over to Jeffrey, who's going to paint a picture in 7 to 10 minutes around what the county is currently doing, why it's doing it, and most importantly, the traction that they're making. And then we'll move to a panel discussion between ourselves and Kareem Webb. Jeffrey, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm really pleased to be here. And, you know, it was mentioned about leadership. And so I would like to say that, you know, the changes that the county is making is as a result of our leadership. We have our board of supervisors who are fully engaged in this and other things that really make a difference. And, you know, it's through their leadership and their vision that we are kind of taking this, in our opinion, to the next level. I think we have a ways to go, but I'm just going to give you a little bit of an overview of what Los Angeles County is doing with regard to fair chance. But just let me tell you about who we are a little bit. You know, LA County, over 10 million residents. Everybody knows we're huge. You know, it's we're larger than 42 other states, largest economy of any state in the country. 88 cities in LA County. The county is an employer. We have over 111,000 employees. We have an over $30 billion budget. We're separated into 35 county departments. So my role is in the centralized human resources department. Each of our county departments has their own human resources operations, and we oversee them. We set policy and make sure that, you know, what they're doing in their operations is aligned with the county's mission and vision. And the services that we provide range from parks and rec services to law enforcement to public social services, health services. So we have a really wide range of things that we do. Mission and vision of Los Angeles County. I won't get into too much detail on that. We only got like 6 minutes. So what I really want to talk about is how we've applied fair chance. So in LA County, I think, you know, we've had a history of applying fair chance. Back in 1998, it wasn't called fair chance then, but our board of supervisors at that time wanted us to take a different approach. And so at that point in 1998, we started doing individualized assessments of each candidate that was coming through our system. So there was no blanket exceptions. We weren't taking the approach that if you had a felony, we weren't going to hire you. It was an individualized assessment at that point in time. And we developed some criteria at that point as to, you know, how do we, some guidance to our managers as to how do we evaluate that? What does that mean? And so we have some guidance related to that. 2013, the ban the box legislation came in. At that point in time, the legislation said you can't ask about conviction history until you've assessed whether or not somebody meets the minimum qualifications for the job. So what we did at that point in time, we actually took it one step further, and we decided as an organization that we were not going to ask anybody about their conviction history until we actually offered them a job. And so on the application, there's no question about that. We did signal that there would be a background check, but we didn't ask about that until after somebody was offered a contingent job. 2015, that's when kind of the federal statutes came in. 2017, the Board of Supervisors again said, hey, let's take another look at this. I think we could do a better job of that. And so they wanted us, Human Resources, and a variety of other departments to look at how we were engaged in this and what we were doing to kind of further this concept. And so then in 2017, Governor Brown signed AB 1008 into law, which really significantly affects fair chance. I would say that when 2017 came into play, the county was already doing a lot of the things that the law provided for, but we did a check anyways. And we put together some work groups. We looked at hiring processes, best practices, community outreach from a perspective of service providers to different populations. And then what kind of programs do we have? And many of you in this room are providing those kinds of programs. And I think we're partnering with a lot of you in here on a variety of things. So we have a number of departments that are involved within the county, Department of Human Resources, where I'm from, Chief Executive Office. We have our own Office of Diversion and Reentry that are focused on the reentry population and creating job opportunities and training. Consumer and Business Affairs, which is focused on dealing with the business community. Workforce Development, Aging is working on educational programs, job training programs. We've had our legal counsel involved. Our Internal Services Department, we put together a policy that talks about how businesses that want to do business with the county, what are the criteria that they have to meet in terms of fair chance. So we're having them certify that you are a fair chance organization before we'll do business with you. And then the Department of Health Services is involved as well. So some of the things that we've done in terms of our employment practices, we used to have a form that once you were offered a job, you have to fill it out, tell us about your criminal history. So we've eliminated that. We don't ask you that question any longer. We only will ask you about your conviction history if you've been offered a job, we've gone through the background, and something comes back to us. And then we have developed forms that communicate with the individuals. We've developed a whole process that we look at it and, we give people an opportunity to come in and tell their story and tell us about any kind of mitigating circumstances. And then we've trained all of our managers from the department, from all the different departments, all their HR managers on what it means to evaluate and how they should evaluate. Right now, we're digging in. We have over 3,000 jobs that we're evaluating, each one of the jobs. And we're going to be saying, what is the nexus between any kind of conviction and the job, and things like recency, and how do we evaluate that? So we've kind of given some really loose guidelines in the past, but we want to be able to have that conversation. And part of it's changing the narrative. Part of it is getting our managers to really think differently about this. And so we're also trying to identify positions that exist in the county that might be primed for fair chance opportunities. And then we've also, tried to engage in an education campaign. So that's, a summary of the things that we're doing. We've changed our application. We've created fair chance language on our job bulletins. Part of what we're doing is with workforce development. I think the Chamber of Commerce is involved. We are developing an educational campaign. Part of it is going to be development of a fair chance website that we will link through the county website that will provide information to people who have been involved in the system and they don't know what to do. They don't know what their rights are. They don't know about expungements. They don't know about all these things. So we're trying to create a hub of information that we can point people to say, these are your rights. And then that will be coupled with a marketing campaign. We have in the works a marketing campaign. It's called Redefining Reentry. And we're really focusing on the 1 in 3 statistic. 1 in 3 people have a felony conviction. And the fact that it's your brother, it's your sister, it's your neighbor, it's your somebody knows somebody. And so just trying to change the narrative around that. So that's one of the things that we're working on. And then we're also developing hard copy promotional materials that we would be putting in a variety of different places, and we'll be integrating it into a lot of our programs through like the Office of Diversion and Reentry and our WeedX programs and all the partnerships that WeedX has with you know, a lot of the organizations that are represented in this room. So then we're also developing our own career pipeline programs. Some of these are representative of the programs that you all are involved with, but we also have things like we've developed our own temporary agencies called Temp LA, and we're hiring people to be placed in temporary jobs, working in county offices. It's things like that. So we're constantly looking to try to develop programs that we can integrate into this concept and create jobs and create opportunities. And so this is, I'm sure, like I said, a number of you are familiar with some of these things. The Reentry Employers Campaign is a partnership with the Chamber of Commerce. And so just to give you an example of one of the things that we've done. So we created a community health worker position. And the thought was through the Department of Health Services is that people with lived experience could help other people with lived experience. And so we actually changed the minimum qualification for the job that you had to have been incarcerated, because you, if you have that lived experience, you're in a better position to help somebody else transition out because you've experienced it and you transitioned successfully. That will make you a good mentor. And so I've heard mentorship a number of times. So this is relatively new. It's been in place for about 8 months. And so, you know, but we're trying to do things like this that will, like I said, create opportunity and create pathways. So I think that's my 7 minutes. So I think that's all I have on the slides. I know that was a real quick overview. I think we're going to do some discussion. So I'll give it back.
Again, Jeffrey, thank you for your time. You can have a seat up front. I think it's critical again to underscore a couple main themes that Jeffrey shared as an employer as it relates to, one, from a policy perspective, they audited some of their policies to ensure that they were more inclusionary. From a practice perspective, shifting practices around actually allocating resources to create new job classifications, allocating resources to educate and develop their management to best win with this target population. Also from a professional development perspective, ensuring that unconscious bias training was integrated across the entire organization. That's putting your values to work, because you know what they say, if you show me your budget, you tell me what you value. So there's significant value that has been generated based upon the county taking resources to ensure that they have the team to best win with this population. And then initiatives and programs related to this work. So these are good examples around how large, we're talking about a $35 billion budget. That's larger than Starbucks' budget. That's larger than most companies' budgets across this nation and the world. If a $35 billion institution can shift its practices to be fair chance, I know that we can get 100 employers across the county to join us in this movement and follow the great model that LA County has placed for us. So let's give Jeffrey a round of applause. And now I want to bring up a brother that I have admired for some time now, because one, he is a phenomenal entrepreneur as the founder of PCF Restaurant Management, a Los Angeles-based franchise of Buffalo Wild Wings. He was one of the first entrepreneurs and business owners I actually met as a young man exiting UCLA. And working at the Los Angeles Urban League. But he also has been a business leader that understands and has demonstrated that you can do good and do well simultaneously. I want to invite Kareem Webb to talk about his experience around shifting these perceived liabilities into assets. And then we're going to have a dialogue about how we can best operationalize some of these practices. Kareem?
How you guys doing? First of all, man, thank you guys for being here, and for the two young men that were speaking earlier. You guys are inspirational, man. So we employ 300 young people in Buffalo Wild Wings in our 44 units, and we have a lot of people who have had brushes with the criminal justice system. And I think, you know, our approach has led to us indexing higher than our competition, or even other franchisees in the same brand, in the same region. And in retail, entry-level employment, you typically are measuring your success by year-over-year sales. And it's a difficult comp, right? Because, you know, conditions always change. And so you look at other franchisees that are in the region or other restaurants doing the same thing that you're doing in the region. And that's how you measure how you're really doing. And we've always indexed 2 or 3% higher, which in retail is significant. And we think that's because of our approach to business and the fact that there's a group of people in and around our restaurants who choose to support us because of our approach. So from a business perspective, it has made business sense to us to take the approach. And I think there are ways that we'll get into that allow us to be successful in it. I will tell you that from a leadership approach and a culture approach, the first thing that we do is we have the disposition that God loves everybody the same. And the difference between those of us who are creating what we want to create for ourselves in our lives and some of us who aren't is our ability to overcome the obstacles. That's it, because we all have them. And when you don't believe or life because of things that have happened in your life through no fault of your own, have led some people to believe that, or not to have a reason to believe that God loves them and that they're worthy. You know, and so our approach first is to say, wait a minute, we're all the same. And you are worthy. And if we, as the leaders in our business, can show up consistently, first and foremost, then we can develop trust, right? And then once we develop trust, then I can ask you to do things and hold you accountable to executing, because it's a competitive landscape. This is America, it's capitalism. There's no excuse for not being competitive. We have to compete and we have to produce. But in order to do that and do it on a consistent basis, you have to believe that it's in your best interest, whether it's an entry-level position or not. So it's incumbent upon us to create a culture that says, this is a healthy place for you to work, that whether it's for 6 months or 2 years or 5 years, whether it's a career, or this is a stopover, whether you're in college and you're a server working for us or whatever, we're going to help you develop your skills in ways that can, you know, be a stepping stone to creating what you want for yourself in your life. If you come in, you execute every day. And that's the culture that we're going to create. And we're going to value every single human being that comes through the door on our team the same, and that comes to spend their hard-earned money, you know, in our restaurants. And we won't get it right all the time, but we're going to be focused on the fact that every human person that we come in contact with deserves our best.
Awesome. So we're just going to have, I'm going to ask a couple questions and just have a dialogue, because I want to, again, paint the picture for all of the individuals in the room. We have the private sector here as well as the public sector, both representative of employers that have made significant shifts and actually integrated into their business model or operating model a strategic focus on those that are justice involved. Shifting, again, a perceived liability that would sit on one side of the balance sheet into an asset. And we've heard from Kareem that there has been a significant gain in competitiveness based upon some of the strategies that he's implemented. So I'm going to double click on that just for a little bit for you, with you, Kareem, is when we think about, or when you thought about some of your work you've done with Bloom and building a lifetime of options and opportunities for young men, it's an initiative by the California Community Foundation that was started over 5 years ago, I believe, focused on really ensuring that young African-American men that have some justice system exposure had access to mentorship, development, economic opportunities. How have you been able to blend that model that Bloom has created into your management style of the people on a day-to-day basis? And have you seen any results different than your regular population that you're hiring from?
Yeah, I think as a business person, you have to first make a business case for what you're doing. And I think what Bloom showed us, one, is that regardless of your political leaning, is a benefit to the taxpayer, right? So $200,000 for, the county and probation spending on young people that are in juvenile justice versus $10,000 that the Brother Crusade or local nonprofits are spending in order to get great results with anti-recidivism and high school graduation and all these, predictive outcomes that would indicate future success, right? And not being, let's just say, a burden on the taxpayer financially versus somebody that is adding value to our society. So that says, okay, well, if that's the case and love works, right, and leadership approach matters, then I can add value as an employer, right? Because as a service provider, Buffalo Wild Wings is, it's like wings, beer, sports, but we are part of a community. We, it's about 80, 85 young people that work in this business, and they all live and have families and folks that, will have an opinion about how we operate and the culture that we create. For years and years and years, because I got a 20-year lease. You can work for me for a little bit of a while, and you will have kids, and I want them to come too, right? So, so the culture and ingraining the culture in the business has, long-term impact, and I think that has, it produces compound positive results over time if we can be consistent with it. So I'd say the Bloom work has informed that in our approach. From the beginning, and not everybody is good at everything, and folks that are re-entering society after having been incarcerated are just like everybody else in society. I come out of McDonald's and we have this, saying in McDonald's, if somebody's good on fries, don't put they behind in the drive-thru because your drive-thru will be messed up, right? So yeah, exactly. Keep them off that. That's what they're great at what they're doing, right? So everybody, every human being is going to come with a different set of skill sets and personality traits, and you got to be able to sit with them and care enough to think about what's the highest and best use of their skill that matches with our needs in order for them to have the best chance to be successful. Just like you would do with anybody else. You don't hire an HR expert to go run, be the head of accounting. So you just got to look at that and be practical in your approach.
So culture is king, and being able to really then behavioralize that culture in day-to-day practices is how you really get the return on investment. And that's just with teams in general. I have a background in organizational development. We understand that culture sits on top of the organizational development pyramid. And it is supreme around how you actually build a vertical of values across a company to actually move your business strategy forward and also move your company from being profitable to even being more competitive, right? So let's stay on that trend. And Jeffrey, I'm going to ask you about the cultural change management strategy the county had to undertake. Because my assumption is that there might have been a small inkling of individuals across the county that might not have seen value in some of the shifts that the county was making around the formerly incarcerated or justice-involved individuals as a target population. So can you talk to us about some of the things that your team did to help move, and this is a huge, again, $35 billion warship that is turning a corner, a significant pivot. What were some of the things, tactical things that you guys did to start and catalyze the change management process to make the county a more fair chance employer?
So we have tried to get the message out early, right? And we've tried to highlight the fact that the concept of fair chance is not new for us, right? So like I said, going back to 1998, we were doing individualized job assessments. And so we're trying to kind of to say that we're improving what we're already doing. And so we're not kind of focusing necessarily that it's a shift for us, that we're just enhancing our existing processes. So that's been one of the messages that we're dealing with. And we have a number of communication groups within the county. And so we've been regularly going to these communication groups to kind of talk about this and what's upcoming, and regular updates on the policy revisions, regular updates on the changes in the law. So it's not a new concept. I think you're right. There are any number of people in our organization that don't understand, but we're working on trying to get them to see the benefits of this, not only because it's the vision of our board of supervisors, but because there is a benefit to the county as an employer to this. We get something like 500,000 applications a year, and for a long time, we've had the ability to be very selective, and it takes a really long time, right? But our managers are really kind of stepping up and realizing that perhaps kind of some of the standards that we have are there for. So we're trying to challenge that. Why? So if we're evaluating somebody with a conviction history, why are you making the judgment one way versus another? And what are the factors that are going into that? So we're engaging in that dialogue on a regular basis. And so, like I said, what I'm doing now is I'm forcing the HR managers to be involved, right? So I'm putting the task to them. I'm not going to just dictate it from a central agency. I'm going to get them involved and make them think about it and say, if I'm the HR manager at Parks and Recreation, does it really matter that I had somebody with a battery conviction 15 years ago, right? So how are you assessing that, and why are you assessing it the way that you have been? And then we're also tracking outcomes, which we haven't done in the past, and we haven't done a good job of that. I think that, the way we approach it, we offered a job to somebody, and then they've been in the system, and we don't know anything more about it, right? That's the way that we've approached it. And I think we want to continue to approach it that way. But we do want to know how good we're doing, right? And so tracking outcomes will help the narrative as well, because then we know whether or not the people that are coming in, we're hoping to be able to, without names attached, track productivity and some of the statistics that you had on that was on the form earlier today about, people stay in jobs longer or more productive or more loyal, those kinds of things. We want to try to develop those kinds of statistics, so then we can change the narrative internally, but also be able to provide that to anybody who needs it. And so it's a slow process. There's a lot of people that have been in the county in place for a long time, and so there's some people that are very set in their ways. But like I said, we're working daily to try to change the narrative, and with things like the campaign and highlighting the fact that it's not just an HR issue, because the county as a service provider is getting out into the community through workforce development, through the Office of Diversion and Reentry. We have the Probation Department, we have the Sheriff's Department. How do we integrate all of that into kind of the vision? And how do we change the narrative, destigmatize all of that? So it's a challenge. I'm not going to lie, but it's something that we are working on daily. And if anybody has any great ideas that you want to bring to us, I'd be happy to hear them.
So, that's excellent. What we heard from Jeffrey is you got to measure what matters, right? Because once you start measuring it and start inspecting the new expectation, that's one of the core strategies around how you start changing behavior across an organization. So when we think about this from a context of what else matters in being successful and winning with this population, Kareem, I would love to hear about how you as a CEO, how do you channel those values that you have, that you spoke to us about, to your frontline managers? Because one of the things that we've realized at LeadersUp is that entry-level employees are not quitting their job because they don't like their jobs. They're actually quitting their managers. So talk to us about how you are working and developing your managers to advance retention, which we know impacts performance as well.
Yeah, well, the way we do that, Jeffrey, is you started with talking about inspecting what you expect. So we've got, you know, a lot of communication built into our business model. And throughout the communication, we're always dealing with our own trauma. So I'm dealing with my own trauma openly and honestly, and my agreement with the rest of the team that Kareem is committed to being the best Kareem that I can be. And that's a process, and it's never going to end. So, you know, as the leader of the organization, I think the people have to be committed to being the best people. So if I'm saying I'm committed to being my best person, it gives me also freedom to say, I'm sorry, I could have done that better. I could have communicated more clearly. I could have dealt with you with more respect. You know, if there was, you know, something where you dropped the ball, and somebody has also the ability to request that of me without being afraid of the repercussion. And that's the way that we lead. So, you know, from a communication perspective, we're always communicating, listen, we're accountable for results, right? But we don't have to make anybody wrong. And so, and we're going to communicate with respect. And we just continue to remind people, man, like I try to look as though the person that I'm talking to, whether I'm happy with their performance or not happy with their performance, is my mother, right? So what conversation am I going to have? How tender and gentle or considerate am I going to be of my mother when I'm telling her, I'm probably going to have to promote you from a team member to a customer because it's not working out, right? So, right? I'm slow. Yeah. Jeffrey's been hitting us with all these highfalutin UCLA words. I had to come with some Morehouse humor. So, yeah. So you know, it's just continuing to remember, man, that it's about the humanity, and that's what business is. Like we get into business or into government or whatever, and we start. You know, there's so many transactions that it becomes transactional. Not the exchange of an idea between human beings. If somebody comes into Buffalo Wild Wings, they spend, you know, a family of 4 comes in on Thursday night, watch the Laker game, they're gonna spend 60, 70, 80 bucks. And when I look at the average household income in 9008, right, in and around that restaurant, I'm like, oh, the after-tax reality of the weekly income of that family, that's a very serious decision. So we need to make sure that that $60, $70 that they had the experience that they expected to have. The food tastes good, the service was good, the restaurant was clean, they left with a smile, their family feels good. How is that going to happen if my team members don't feel good about working there and they're dealing with the trauma of having to get their kid to daycare? All the things that we all got to deal with, let alone the trauma that's come from, you know, the situation that put us in working in an entry-level position. Because if we could be at Harvard or Yale and a money manager on Wall Street right now, we probably would. But we're not. We live in South LA. We're 20 years old or 21 years old. We're an entry-level employee, and we're trying to figure out what's next for us. We got to be real about that and embrace people and say, okay, this is a way.
I mean, one of the things when I started LeadersUp, I moved from LA and I had to go to Seattle because we were incubated and launched by Starbucks. So one of the things that was, when you go to Starbucks headquarters, that is in the front of the entranceway as you walk in, is the mission of Starbucks is actually performance through the lens of humanity, and being able to ensure that we leverage and treat our most valuable asset of any business, which is human capital, with the respect that we all deserve, is critical. And I think when we are not just talking about the justice involved young adults, but also talking about just how to win with the next generation of talent, it's critical for employers to understand some of the things that we're talking about related to this marginalized community is really salient across all communities around how do you really develop and employ inclusionary practices that will help you be successful. So we only have about 8 minutes, and I just took 2 of them. So I want to give both of our guests some opportunities just to leave the people in the room with a charge related to your own experience around why this fair chance, just opportunity movement is not just good for our community, but good for how you're going to run, how we run our businesses. So I'll start with Jeffrey and then with you, Kareem.
So I think I would just say that from my personal perspective, I just think it's the right thing to do, right? It just seems like, and all the statistics that were there earlier about the opportunity and potential, but what you were saying about treating people with respect, and I'm like everybody else. I have people in my life that have been in that situation, and I believe that people deserve a second chance. People deserve to be helped, and I think that for the county, I mean, we're in public service. That's what we do, right? And so for us, I think that should be one of our core principles, is that not just do we go out into the community and do that, but as an employer, what are we doing to help people? And so, we're working on developing programs that are targeted at achieving that. Like I said, I think we have a ways to go, but we're focused on it. And I think that's a start, and there's always room for growth. And so I think we're on the right track. I think that, any employer that is looking at this issue and trying to make a decision about, well, who am I going to be? I would want to be this gentleman's company, right? I would want to be the socially responsible company, because you know what? Kindness and love really will breed more of it, right? And it's just gonna. I just think it's the right thing to do.
Thank you. I think it's just incumbent upon all of us, with a sense of humility to just remember, but by the grace of God, it could be us. We've all made mistakes. There's sometimes a difference between the one that's in the reentry situation and us is the fact they got caught, we didn't. Right. So that's number one. And then two, what an opportunity. Right. So I always say, like, the richest part of LA is the part of LA with the most undeveloped human capital, because that's where all the potential is. Right. And those of us that are entrepreneurs, or even in the county, we're thinking about it wisely. We're like, okay, well, where's the potential for growth? Right. Well, where is the human capital the least exercised? That's where it's at, right? And we can figure out ways to exercise that human capital, right? I think that's where the goal is, and figuring out how to do that in ways that convert that human capital to financial capital. And this is America, and we're capitalistic. There's a major win there, and so that's why I'm fired up. So I'm like in the middle of it, trying to figure out a way out.
Now, let's see. Let's give Kareem a round of applause too. Any questions? We're going to open it up to the audience. Any questions or feedback? Again, this segment is around how do we operationalize some of these practices. Yes, ma'am.
Are you training from the top management to be able to say changing that paradigm, that thinking? Because that's where we have to start at the head to make it come down to the bottom. So how are you working? Because one of the things that I did see on your thing was that you don't hire growth. So that's where we have a problem, because part of getting off the road, we have criminogenic needs that met housing, employment. And so people aren't getting a chance to go off the road. So I'm trying to understand your program, how it's working, starting to have a chance on the top.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the charge is coming from the Board of Supervisors. So the supervisors are the ones who are saying, we need to look at this. We need to make change. We need to, if fair chance is a concept that our departments like workforce development and Office of Diversion and Reentry are out there in the community trying to build programs around that, we also have to walk the walk, right? So as an employer, what are we going to do? How are we going to be that? That particular example, that is a new concept for us, and that's kind of where the slow moving shift comes, right? So for us to even open up a job opportunity like that, I think is a step in the right direction. I think there's lots of opportunities, but that's only one job, right? So we are exploring other ways in terms of the message top down. So our board is telling all the department heads, the people that are running each of the county departments, this is important to us. And so, as evidenced by, 8 or 9 county departments working together to try to figure out a way to get the county's profile in this area and the way we do business in this area to a better place. And so it's going to take time, but I think we are, again, like I said, we're headed in the right direction. That's one step. I think I would anticipate we will have more steps. I think there are some programs where we're doing jail-based job training, so we're training people who are actually still in custody, and we're looking at how we can place them into jobs coming directly out of a custody environment.
Any other questions? Yes, Stephanie.
Hi, Stephanie from Bank of America. My question is around the support for your new hirees, particularly those that are justice involved. It's one thing to give them a job, and it's another to ensure their success. So operationally, how do you ensure that they're successful throughout the onboarding and trial process?
So I can give you the example of our new temp. It's called Temp LA program. So we're hiring people in, and we're putting them through a training program, and we are kind of monitoring them and giving them a resource throughout their assignments, so that if they have questions, concerns, they can go back to not somebody who's actually supervising them, but somebody from like the HR department that can provide guidance and support to them. And then there's also a dedicated training program that's associated with that. It's I think it's 40 hours of training that we're putting them through. And then there's ongoing training once they get into an assignment, training for their specific assignment, training for the specific department. And then the county is developing what we're calling LA County University. And so we have a variety of ongoing training programs. We have a leadership development program, supervisor development program that, once you're an employee of the county, you can participate in those things and, help your career along. I hope that answers.
Corinne, you want to also respond to that, maybe put some context around some of your community partners and how they provide support?
Yeah, that's what it is for us, because we take the question off our application. So oftentimes we don't know. And so I want to give people the opportunity to come fresh. And we just set an orientation, what are the behavioral expectations, and here's the open door policy, and here's your value and your worth. And then it's up to us to execute against that in our training process. But also we get a lot of referrals. So of our 400, 300 plus, employee base, so up to about 15% is referral based. So we've got several different nonprofits that we have relationships. Jeffrey calls me and says, I have somebody, they're gonna get a job, right? So Brother Crusade calls me and says, I have somebody, they're gonna get a job. And typically in those instances, those organizations come with wraparound services, right? And so they're getting serviced by folks who are experts in doing that work. And we've got to be experts at executing, the opportunity as an employer and as a business.
Any other questions? Yeah, go
ahead. Chris with 2 hands to employ for you, great. So one thing in hospitality, it's all about the entry-level position, work your way up. How are you empowering your employees to start from the beginning and to stay the course? To know it's good to start like as a busser, but to also be a server and continue to work your way up.
Well, that opportunity is there, and I'm pretty clear about that. The great thing about entry-level employment, or like in the restaurant business, what I tell people on day one, right, is listen, if you bust your behind for 4 years, you're making $80,000, right? Running a restaurant, learning how to, run a $5 million unit, right? The inventory, and if you can do that well, you can do anything, right? If you can figure out how to make money on our margins, you can do pretty much any business, right? So that's what it is. You could come with zero experience, have no college debt. I'm not saying don't go to college, but I'm saying if you come and you're looking to create, the type of income that will allow you to take care of yourself and your family moving forward, you can do that here in 4 years, just busting, because it's not rocket science, right? And so we say that at the beginning, and then people make the choices they make, and it's not for everybody. It's not having a career. It's not we're not hiring for career people. We're hiring for people who want to leverage the opportunity and show up, be a part of a good team, and then everybody has choice.
Let's give our panelists and guest speakers a round of applause. I think it's important for businesses to talk to other businesses around the opportunity, around the practice, and also around the impact that is that's being made. Jeffrey and Kareem, I want to thank you. I know you guys are both very busy, but we appreciate you guys being champions and advocates around this critical work that we're doing.
Yeah. Y'all give it up, Jeffrey.